Hi people, and thanks for coming to the channel. Now, I don't usually do this, but this is kind of a follow-up, literally, to the video I've just made on what I regard as the Tories' callous welfare policies. And I think this is a very appropriate follow-up because it's precisely the sort of situation that is happening. It's in the same edition of the Eye, that is the 17th of November 2023, and this report is by Claudia Tanner. So I'll just read it out, it's not too long, bear with me. Woman denied benefits while dying of cancer. A woman who died of bowel cancer was denied benefits in the last months of her life after she was noted to be well nourished, that's in inverted commas, despite weighing just 6 stone. Carol Sands from Southend, Essex, who died at the age of 56, could not afford to give up her job running a homelessness charity shop despite grueling chemotherapy sessions and watching her weight plummet. Her sister Annie Sands told I, it was devastating for her while she was dealing with having cancer and going through horrible treatment. People with cancer shouldn't be worrying about fighting for their money during the last days. Ms. Sands, who runs the Disability and Wellness Network, a community interest company providing welfare rights advice, said there has been little improvement in access to welfare payments since the death of her sister who had 3 children in 2017. A spokesman for the Department for Work and Pensions said yesterday our sincere condolences are with the Sands family. Bit too bloody late now. Our disability assessors are all qualified health professionals, and in the majority of cases we make the right decision. When someone disagrees with an assessment, they can ask for this to be reconsidered and appeal to an independent tribunal. Well, firstly, sincere condolences from the DWP. I don't believe that because they're a pretty callous government body. I just don't think that they really care. They only care about the fact it's being reported. And people might say, Nathan, that's very cynical, you can't know that. But when you consider the previous video's context, which is about how this government is focused on a sanction culture, it's difficult to divorce the two components. Where you have people, in this case, a woman who is terminally ill, weighs just 6 stone, you know, gets these threats for her. Well, in fact, it isn't even threats they went through with it, they cut off her benefits. I mean, that is utterly heartless. And clearly, in this case, there's some answers to be found. I mean, what were those medical assessors thinking? That they deemed her to be well nourished, despite weighing 6 stone. Now, I'm not a medical expert, but that's clearly not someone who's well nourished. So there's just incompetence there. And once again, it's the incompetence of DWP staff or contractors or advisors who are causing problems for claimants. But this is the bit that really gets me. When someone disagrees with an assessment, they can ask for this to be reconsidered and appeal to an independent tribunal. They know damn well how difficult that is. And it's the onus that's put on the claimant, like, you have to face a bureaucracy, you have to go through this. Never mind our incompetence, because they don't take responsibility. And like I said in the previous video, there's often been cases where claimants have been punished for the incompetence or the mistakes of DWP staff. Now, mistakes happen, it's part of human nature, but at the very least, they shouldn't blame claimants for that. They should improve the training or, work to fix that problem. But don't blame the claimants, don't sanction the claimants when it's clearly the administrative error. They won't even apologise to the claimants in those situations. And again, I speak from personal experience from people, well, rather, I should say, people I know who've been through this, who have turned up to an appointment. The appointment just was cancelled without any notice. No one showed up to interview them, and then they were blamed for not turning up. And when the record was set straight, no apology. They just say, okay, well, that's what happened. No apology. So I do think there's a sneering contempt from some, at least some, who work in the DWP for the unemployed. Now, this lady, clearly a very compassionate individual, despite her own very serious problems, she was helping others, running a homeless charity. I think that's a testament to her. But this is not an isolated case. This is not an outlier. There have been many similar cases, maybe not the exact details, but similar cases where people have been terminally ill, have either had their benefits cut off or they've been threatened with having them cut off. The last video was about the sanction culture. But there's also actually an issue about people who are actually entitled to payments not getting them. Again, we hear a lot about so-called free money, but there's people who are actually entitled to payments and they're not getting them. This is a disgrace. And the DWP can say, oh, they send out condolences, but it is the culture that is going on in that department that is causing this. And unless there's a radical change of that culture, it will continue to happen. I mean, couple this with the Chancellor's pre-autumn statement, what he's threatening to do with unemployed people, and almost inevitably there will be more cases like this, and there has been before. I remember hearing about a man who was severely emaciated and he got threatening letters that he was fit to work, then he died. And there's been other cases where people have taken their own lives. It infuriates me because it's not necessary and it is avoidable. And it makes a mockery of so-called compassionate conservatism. I don't know if Sunak would describe himself as being sort of one nation Tory that Cameron did, but it's just it's infuriating, and I just have so much sympathy for people who are in this position. And it shouldn't be a case of sending condolence afterwards and we're very sorry after the fact. They should be changing the system right now to make sure this never happens again. But they won't. I don't think there is willpower in the DWP to change that. So sadly, it will happen again. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say the Tories have blood on their hands for the policies that they're enacting. And it may be bureaucracy. I'm not saying they're going out of the way to, kill people, to put it bluntly, but they are, and this woman had cancer, that's cancer. But in the cases of suicides, unquestionably they contribute to it, without question. If you're facing clinical depression and then on top of that, you're getting threatening letters, you're being threatened with money being cut off, all that sort of thing, it's unquestionably going to exacerbate an already bad mental health situation. So I think this case just highlights the problem that is out there, namely that there is a tone-deaf attitude from the DWP and from ministers, the Secretary of State for Work and Pensions, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, from government ministers who are pushing this aggressive, callous rhetoric about the unemployed, and I am sick of it. They've been doing this for 14 years. It was particularly, robust at the beginning, and now I think coming up to a general election, they're doing the same thing. I think they're trying to pitch to their core supporters. But make no mistake, this case is not isolated. This is not some outlier. Very similar things have happened in the last 14 years where people who have been chronically ill have been threatened and in some cases had their money cut off, um, or people who have been vulnerable in terms of mental health have been pushed over the edge. But quite frankly, when it comes to depression, anyone who is pushed into that position, this isn't something where it's just vulnerable people. Anyone can be pushed over the edge, and it's just unnecessary. This is not helping people into work. This is callous and tone deaf, and it's a good example of ministers not understanding the shoes of those they're affecting with their policies, not understanding living in the shoes, I should say. It's absolutely infuriating. That report, once again, is by Claudia Tanner. It's dated the 17th of November 2023. It's infuriating, and Labour has to show that it's different. Not just words, they have to prove it. They have to prove that they're going to clean this up and make sure that the culture in the DWP changes so that people who really are ill are not stigmatised and not threatened. And I would say, overall, a change in that sanction culture. It has to change. Also, in this specific case, I would say those who assessed her should be fired for incompetence or at least face some sort of disciplinary hearing. I mean, how can they rule that she is well nourished when she's 6 stone? I don't understand that. Um, that to me suggests they didn't do their job properly or they're just sheer incompetent. And it's basically meant that this woman has died with this hanging over her in her darkest moments. That's a disgrace. Now, in this case, the policy didn't kill her. She had cancer, but she shouldn't have went through that in her darkest hours. It's horrendous. Um, the last moments of her life to have to then worry about that because she has dependents. It's infuriating. And their apologies are not good enough. They have to change the culture within because that's another thing. The apologies are hollow when you couple that with the rhetoric that Jeremy Hunt's coming out with. Damn disgrace.